This is currently the most powerful laptop Apple has ever produced, the M3 Max MacBook Pro. And this is one of the most powerful Windows laptops currently available, the Lenovo Legion 9i. But the question is, how do they compare? I mean, are MacBooks just fancy, overpriced pieces of junk, or could they legitimately be more powerful than Windows laptops now? Well, I'll be comparing them in a bunch of real-life apps and workflows, and don't worry, I'll compare the other stuff too, like how hot they get, fan noise, and what happens when you do this. Now, quick side note here, this video is not sponsored by Apple or Windows or Lenovo or Bill Gates or anything like that. It's entirely based off my own opinion and experiences after using both Macs and Windows machines for probably the last 15 years. Which also means buying all of these things every single year to make these comparison videos is starting to get really, really expensive. Luckily, menswear brand LESTRANGE reached out to sponsor this video. More on that later. Okay, so just to preface this video, a few quick things. Now, in terms of price, the Lenovo Legion 9i spec I have here is anywhere from $3,500 to about $4,000 US, depending on the current sales available, versus $4,000 US for the 16-inch M3 Max MacBook Pro with 48 GPU cores. But even though the pricing is somewhat similar, the actual technology behind these individual laptops aren't really comparable. The MacBook is ARM-based Apple Silicon, and the Windows laptop is, of course, based on x86 architecture. They are completely different. It's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. Get it? But one of the biggest differences between the two, at least in my opinion, is how they use memory, or RAM. The Windows laptop has 32 gigabytes of system RAM to run programs and processes, and the RTX 4090 GPU in this laptop has 16 gigabytes of RAM. And at first glance, you might think that 32 plus 16 adds up to 48 gigabytes, which is the exact same as the MacBook. But Apple Silicon works a little bit differently. It uses something called unified memory, which means everything, including the CPU and GPU, has access to all of the RAM. This means that the M3 Max's GPU has access to almost 3 times more memory than the RTX 4090. And we'll see how that goes later on. But at the end of the day, regardless of what laptop you use, I mean, they generally accomplish the same tasks, right? Like playing a game or rendering a 3D model. What's really important is how they arrive at the end result in terms of battery life and efficiency, for example, and how well they achieve certain tasks. So for that reason, this video is going to focus solely on those things and not all of the other stuff we can compare, like operating system, the keyboards, or port selection, for example. If you do want to watch separate reviews on each of these laptops, I will have them linked down below as well. So let's talk about the CPU. The MacBook is rocking the 16-core M3 Max CPU versus the Intel i9 13980HX on the Legion. Using the latest version of Cinebench 2024, which actually includes better support for Apple Silicon now, the M3 Max slightly outperforms the Intel chip in both multi-core and single-core performance by about 10%. If you're a coder who regularly compiles code, the M3 Max is also superior here. And if we look at power draw, aka how much power each laptop sucks up to produce those demanding Cinebench multi-core results, Intel claims the 13980HX has a maximum power draw of up to 157 watts. In my experience, in this particular laptop, it hovered around 125 watts in Cinebench, versus, of course, the M3 Max CPU at just 52 watts. So to put that into perspective, the Mac was only 12% faster, but required less than half the power to achieve that result. Comparing this on a score per watt basis really helps display this efficiency difference visually. And as you might expect, this efficiency is really important for a portable laptop, but more on that a little bit later. So that is the in a perfect world CPU differences. So let's actually compare these two in a bunch of real life workflows, apps, and programs and see how they compare. If we start with some creative workflows like the Adobe suite, I'm mostly using a benchmark called Puget Bench to compare here. It combines a whole heap of stuff like timeline scrubbing, playback, rendering, and effects or plugin performance, etc., and then gives a combined score. For pretty much anything Adobe, the Mac comes out ahead. Note that for Photoshop, I had to use the Intel version because the benchmark hasn't been updated for Apple Silicon, so these results are actually using the Rosetta 2 emulation software. After Effects in particular performs really well on M3 Max because it can be very RAM and also GPU intensive. The advantage of the M3 Max is that, like I mentioned before, it has 48 gigabytes of unified memory that the After Effects program itself, the CPU, and the GPU can access at 400 gigabytes per second, versus the Legion with slower and less overall RAM available for the GPU. Now, there is a ton of other stuff that I want to show you, but these laptops are really premium, right? And it only makes sense that you pair them with some really premium clothes. And that is where the sponsor for this video comes in, LESTRANGE. It's a menswear brand of modern essentials, seamlessly blending luxury and impact-conscious design. The brand's ethos, with less, do more, aims to simplify the wardrobe with quality and versatile garments. These are the 24 trousers, and I personally love that they fit in pretty much any environment like the office or on a night out. Just tailored enough with a shirt, but also casual enough with a tee. Super versatile. Plus, I'm quite tall, 6'4", and I've got a really weird waistline, so the pants I buy are usually either too tight there or too loose, and I have to wear a belt. Not with these bad boys though, because there's a hidden elastic waistband and drawstring cords I can use to get the perfect fit instead of an uncomfortable belt. You can also get the 24 trousers in multiple colors and various fabrics and fits, so you can choose your exact style and look. You can combine them with a classic crew neck jumper made of Italian merino wool, or with this lightweight shirt made of soft fabric sourced from eucalyptus trees. The fabric is woven in Italy, and all garments are produced in Europe using renewable materials. You also get a complimentary repair service to extend the lifetime of any of your garments. So click the link in the description and use code CRTech30 to make your first LESTRANGE purchase today. Okay, getting back into it, now, video editing was actually really surprising to me because I always try to take a real-life approach. So I test out different timelines, including a 4K multicam timeline with 4 different streams of demanding footage with color grading, another timeline with the maximum noise reduction setting, and I could not tell a difference between either computer in either scrubbing or real-time playback. And if you are comparing laptops for video editing, this is the most important part, right? Like, if you're a video editor, you spend 95% of your time in the timeline scrubbing and previewing things. Likewise, when I moved onto the more intensive stuff, almost zero difference, including rendering 20-minute multicam projects and stabilizing demanding footage. What I found super interesting though is that the Mac, for the first time ever, beat out the Windows machine when rendering in a more Windows-specific codec, DNxHR. If you remember back to my previous videos, the Mac always got smoked here because it wasn't able to take advantage of those hardware video encoders and decoders built into the Apple Silicon chip. So it seems like the improvements that Apple has made to the M3 Max GPU has really started to close this gap. Moving on to 3D workflows, let's start with Blender. In all of my previous MacBook versus PC laptop videos, this is where the Mac gets absolutely wrecked. But this time, it's a little bit different. Now, we already know about a piece of technology called optics. It takes advantage of the ray tracing cores in the Nvidia GPU on the Windows machine to improve 3D rendering performance. But now, for the first time ever, we've got hardware-accelerated ray tracing on Apple Silicon as well. And we're starting to see support for it in programs like Blender, with their new 4.0 update allowing Metal RT to be selected in the settings. And at first glance, it doesn't seem to do much, right? I mean, the RTX 4090 still destroys the M3 Max and is twice as powerful in programs where ray tracing is supported, like Blender and Cinema 4D. Also bear in mind that Apple ray tracing support is very limited right now. There's barely any apps or programs out there that support it, and that is not going to change for a while. But let's just take a step back and get some perspective here. Now, in my previous video in this series, I compared the M1 Max with an RTX 3080 Ti laptop, where the differences were much more extreme, and the M1 Max was about 5 times slower than its Nvidia counterpart. But 18 months later, as we've just seen, I mean, that gap has closed significantly. So instead of being 5 times slower, the MacBook is now 2 times slower. And that leads perfectly into what I want to compare next, which is gaming. As I showed in my full review video, the Legion shreds games, even modern AAA titles like Warzone. And a large part of that is because, the majority of game developers design their games for Windows. It's one of the biggest platforms for gaming, unlike Mac, which is significantly smaller. That being said, in a perfect world, and using synthetic benchmarks, the M3 Max GPU using the Metal API comes fairly close to the RTX 4090 using DirectX 12. In reality though, even with a semi-optimized for Apple Silicon game like Tomb Raider, the gap widens and the Windows machine just does a better job and is supported better by most games. But when I moved over to a game that's been optimized for both platforms like Resident Evil Village, and I also enable all the platform-specific enhancements like RTX DLSS on the Legion and set Metal FX upscaling to quality on the M3 Max, performance is actually very close. Now just note here, for the sake of this comparison, I played the game on the exact same external gaming monitor at 1440p resolution. And look, you can see the FPS is very comparable between the two. I did also try changing the Metal FX upscaling setting to performance mode, and it did boost FPS, but it also resulted in a significant decrease in image quality. I mean, the graphics almost looked like they were being downscaled to 1080 or 720p. Now, don't get me wrong, I would much prefer the Legion if I was going to be doing any kind of serious gaming. I mean, it's got a bunch of gaming specific features like G-Sync and a much better screen, but this kind of performance differences between the two in terms of a modern AAA rated game being so close is pretty impressive. And I think even if you are a MacBook hater, you gotta admit that that's pretty good. Now, quick side note as well, we're also not really seeing the new hardware accelerated ray tracing tech in the M3 Max here. It's still very early days, so there may be significant future performance improvements once support and compatibility start to roll out. So let's move into the more interesting part of the video, at least in my opinion. Now, we already know that Macs have quite a few disadvantages. For example, they're usually much more expensive. You can't replace or upgrade the SSD or RAM. Side note, you can in the Legion. macOS is kind of locked down compared to Windows and, a bunch of other stuff. But in this video, I want to focus on two massive negatives of the Windows laptops compared to their Apple counterparts. Firstly, what I like to call the performance byproducts, aka they're really powerful, but they're also really hot and loud. Now, the 16-inch M3 Max MacBooks fans aren't silent, but they are considerably less loud and often won't even turn on until absolutely necessary. Take a listen. You'll also get a lot more heat produced on the Intel and RTX laptops, especially from the GPU, with a lot of this transferring directly to and heating up the chassis of the laptop. The Mac just seems to run cooler. But why is this? Why does the Mac not only keep up with the Windows machine in most areas, but does so while being cooler and quieter? Well, the answer is efficiency. To give you an example, I attached a power usage meter to the charger of each laptop while it was performing an extremely demanding task, and also while its battery was fully charged. The Legion laptop is on the left and the MacBook is on the right. So in layman's terms, the MacBook was able to achieve most of the result of the Legion laptop, but also used 3.5 times less power to do so. Now, bear in mind, this does depend on the task you're doing. If it's something like video editing or using the Adobe apps, the performance on the Mac is equal or better, but it still uses way less power. And if I disconnect the Legion from its charger, but also set it to battery high performance mode and run some of the same benchmarks on battery alone, you can see performance drops significantly. But it doesn't for the M3 Max because it's extremely efficient and the battery is able to provide enough wattage for the entire system to run at full speed. So yeah, look, I have to say I was pretty surprised this year with all of these performance differences. And we can hate Apple all we want, and they do a lot of really dumb stuff that I've covered in other videos, but I don't think anyone can deny that the performance improvements that Apple has brought with the M3 Max this year is really impressive. Particularly 3D related things like Blender and gaming. I mean, those have always traditionally been areas that Windows machines have excelled at. But now you see the MacBook catching up exponentially every single year. And not only that, but the Macs are getting things like hardware accelerated ray tracing and support from large game developers now. So yeah, the next 3 to 5 years is going to be very, very interesting. And if you do also want to pick up some clothes from LESTRANGE, I'll put a discount code down in the description. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one. I'll see you next year for the M4 or whatever Intel releases. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.